Constraints. We're always talking about constraints in your business, whether it's lean management, lean manufacturing, performance. I'm a human capital guy. I deal in talent, so I'm always talking about experience gaps and the constraints of your people. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you put a plan in place to develop your people as your company grew? Welcome to episode 34 of the Keyhire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of Keyhire.solutions, where we grow Texas business with our talent, and I'll be your host. Today, our guest is Paul Thornton. He is a former professor of business administration. He has 20 plus years doing that. He's an author, over 23 books, and he's also a leadership coach. He's a lifelong teacher and student of leadership. He's authored, as I mentioned, over 23 books on leadership. And he's walked the talk, and he's been in various leadership roles throughout his career, mostly in aerospace. You can tell I'm a music fan. Mostly in aerospace and college. He coached hockey, something we have in common. He's joining us from the Boston, Massachusetts area. So we'll get him on. We'll talk a little business and maybe a lot of hockey. Paul, let's bring him on, Matt. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Corey. It's great to be here.
Awesome. And we were talking earlier, if anyone is out there and they're hockey fans, we were just talking about the tragic loss of Johnny Gaudreau this past weekend. And I was explaining to you, my son plays hockey, and he wore Johnny's jersey as he was trying out for his AA team 2 years ago. He was a big fan. That was a big loss for the hockey community.
Yeah, definitely.
And not to capitalize on it, but that was a little guy. I think when he got drafted, they were saying he was like 5'7" and barely 160 pounds. And he was the second leading scorer in the NHL one year. I mean, that's just a testament to, if you put your mind to it and you put in the work, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about hockey. It doesn't really matter what size you are. There's people that are 6'6" and there's people that are 5'7" that are participating in the NHL, and they're outstanding, and it's amazing. Your size is something that's not always that relevant in hockey.
Right.
Basketball I guess basketball, the point guards are on the shorter side, but anyway.
Hockey's one of those few sports where there's room for people of all sizes. I guess they all kind of do in a sense. Anyway, we could talk hockey. Maybe we'll do that offline. But today we're talking about constraints in terms of your leadership growing with your business. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart, because this is what we do. Often we get a call from a small business owner when they're feeling a little overwhelmed, or they're really unsure about what's happening with my team. The people that used to deliver on time and deliver amazing results are now struggling, or we're not meeting our on-time deliveries, or our quality is suffering, or the sales pipeline isn't what it used to be. And oftentimes that's because the business revenue and volume and sophistication has outgrown the experience of the people trying to run it. So I'm excited to talk about that with you today. So let's kind of maybe start with some definitions, the what is it question. So we have two kind of things we might need to explain. So let's start with your definition of what a constraint might look like in terms of your talent or leadership.
I think a constraint is really anything that's holding the leader back from maximizing their skills and strengths and helping the team develop and succeed. One that's often mentioned is the leader doesn't delegate as much as they should.
Yep.
They want to hold on to too much. They become the bottleneck in the organization or the team. So that's a constraint. Other people these days, there's an awful lot on their plate. Their workload is, increasing daily and weekly. they're stressed, they're unable to take on sometimes new tasks and new initiatives and things like that. So that can hold back the individual from taking on more of a leadership role or getting their stuff done in a timely fashion, you know?
Right.
So I think one of the things leaders need to do, I love the Jack Welch workout approach where you get the right people together in a room and you say, what can we stop doing? You know, what isn't adding value anymore?
Right.
It used to add value, but it doesn't any longer. I don't think companies do enough of that. And I think just over time, we tend to, I don't know, put in place meetings and rules and procedures and stuff that don't add value. You know, they're just they take up time and they just don't add the value that they once did. So eliminate them, free up that time, you know, that type of thing.
So as you were speaking, I had more than, but I've narrowed it down to 3 thoughts. Number one,
Yeah.
what I think I heard you say was the constraint can be the leader,
Yep.
but it can also be, sorry, the owner, the president of the company, but it also can be that department head or whatever. It does not discriminate, right? It's
Right.
kind of whoever is out of their depth.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is, you know, you talked about that micromanaging piece. I've probably interviewed tens of thousands of people in my life, leaders primarily. And the one thing I don't think I've ever heard is, man, I love being micromanaged.
Mm.
No one has ever told me that. And it's
Yeah.
weird, right? But
Yep.
so I think that comes down to a trust issue, which is what the question was. And I'll ask this, then I'm going to ask another question and we can talk about it. But do you think that micromanaging piece from a leader who's trying to hang on to everything comes down to trust? And then the second point I have is, or third point is, you talked about what can we stop doing? And that kind of set off a rocket flare in my brain, because I thought, geez, I never thought of it like that, because I think there are a lot of businesses that start and grow and they bootstrap and everyone does everything. And they create these cadences and these rhythms of activity because maybe to get going, that's what they needed to do. But then once they hit their stride and they start taking on that more corporate feel and they're getting that structure and a traditional organization in place, they maintain those habits or procedures or whatever because that's what they've done. And when you say you start pulling these out, I think the last conversation we had was how to do less and improve more, and that would fall right into line, right? That was Chad, who was on our last show back in August. You know, he talked about how to change less stuff and make bigger improvements. So that tracks as well. So long way around to say, do you think micromanagement comes from is a trust issue? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have 2 thoughts on micromanagement. One, believe it or not, I believe there are times when micromanagement is appropriate.
Okay.
I was teaching my grandson last week how to dock my boat. I have a 17-foot boat, and I was taking him out, and 12 years old, never done it before, and I wanted him to dock the boat at the gas dock. So I was giving him a lot of instruction, observing him very closely, jumping in when I had to, you know, micromanaging him until he got it. Even the next day we went out and we tried docking my boat at another boat, and it was a very windy day. So there were changed conditions and we went through the wind factor and what you got to do. But anyway, a lot of detail, a lot of precise direction, a lot of observation and giving him immediate feedback, et cetera. So micromanaging. The problem is some leaders continue to do that, even after the person's gained the skills, they no longer need all that direction and
Right.
all that feedback and what have you. They know how to dock the boat and they can do it. Let them do it.
Right.
So I think there is a factor of, are you willing to let go? You the leader. Sometimes I think I've found some leaders like doing a particular task and they hate to give it up, so they don't want to let go. Other times, I think, as you pointed out, trust is a factor. They are doubtful the person is going to do it as good as they would do it, or they're doubtful the person will do it the way they would do it.
That was my distinction. Is it as good as them or different from them?
They might be afraid they'll do it differently and they'll be more efficient than the boss.
Agreed. I agree 100% with that. Yeah.
So they reluctantly hold on and don't empower the person and let them go. Let them go and do it and make a few mistakes. It's not going to kill anyone, and learn and prosper. The other analogy I've used is you're teaching your child how to ride their bike. The first time you do it, you're holding onto the seat, you're giving them instructions and balance and all that. Well, at some point you got to let go, right? The kid will never learn to ride the bike if you don't let go. Yep, they might fall down a couple times and bruise, but you can coach them on the best way to fall and prepare them.
Sure.
So yeah, it should be done gradually, but if you want to grow your business from, $1 million to 10 million to 50 million, you got to learn to delegate and get good at it and trust people and don't kill them when they make a mistake, because, we all make mistakes. Just don't over delegation can be a problem though, too. You don't want to over delegate and give them things that are way out of their comfort zone and puts them into a panic. And if they screw up, it's really going to sink the company. Obviously you don't want to do that. So I think trust is a factor often in not wanting to let go. And to your point, they're afraid they're going to do it differently than the way I would do it. And how's that going to make me feel?
Right. All right. So that was a long way around what a constraint is. So now let's talk about leadership development, and maybe we can just do a quick and dirty definition of, what it can look like, right? Because I think when people hear leadership development, they think expensive, they think consultants, they think schooling, they think, I don't have time for this, I don't have budget for this. So walk us, maybe just give us a high overview of, in your world, what does leadership development look like?
Well, I think the first thing leaders need to do is get clear on their core beliefs and values. And I think that requires reflection, meditation, thinking about it, talking with a coach or mentor, but getting really clear over time. And it's not something you can do overnight or sitting down once or twice. It takes time to get clarity on your core beliefs and values. What do you stand for? Where do you draw the line? So I think coaching the senior leader or owner, president can coach the senior team on the importance of getting clear on your core beliefs and values, and maybe some techniques of how to do it, and maybe can mentor one or two of his people one-on-one and help them, develop that clarity.
Okay.
I think also discussing what are the company's core values. What does the company stand for? I think the high-performing companies, I think, have, a small number of values, like 3 to 5, that they believe in, they take seriously, they live by, they operate by. So I think talking about those on a regular basis is really important.
Right.
I'll tell you a little story. One of my students was telling me she works at a restaurant, and before the evening shift starts, the night supervisor gets the group together for a 5-minute meeting. And he talks to the group about one of their core values. Like one of them might be respect. So it's a stand-up meeting and they talk about respect for 5 minutes. And he asks questions like, what does respect mean to you? How will you be respectful to customers tonight?
Right.
How will you be respectful to your teammates, et cetera? So you get the point. Each night they take one of their values and they talk about how are they going to operationalize it that night. And it really makes the values come alive and makes them, they're important. And they really tie into the strategy the restaurant is put in place to, delight the customer, wow the customer, and keep the customer coming back.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one thing they can do, get clarity on your core beliefs and values and that type of thing. Secondly, I think there's a set of skills that leaders need, certainly the basic ones: communicating, resolving conflicts, decision-making, giving feedback, coaching other people. All those skills are things that you can develop as a leader. And really, there's a lot of ways you can get at it. I mean, reading books, looking at YouTube videos, attending podcasts. I like the idea of the team, selecting an article or book that they all read and they take 30 minutes, once a month to discuss that book. What are the key points and what can we learn? And, how can that help you be a more effective leader?
Right.
That type of thing. So I think things like that they're not expensive and you can do it tomorrow.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you don't need to go out and get everyone a personal coach.
Right.
Cool. All right. So let's kind of move into the next segment, which is what are the mistakes? So I think we've done a great job at outlining kind of some simple, easy, inexpensive and effective things we can do. We've outlined what a constraint looks like. So what are the mistakes you've seen a small business owner make when they're trying to coach up or develop leaders as they're growing, so that they're kind of adding capacity as the business is adding capacity?
Yeah. I think on a kind of a general point, you've heard this before and your audience, I'm sure, has, but as the company grows, you, the leader of the company or president of the company, need to transition gradually from working in the business to working on the business, right? So what does working on the business mean? To me, it means you're spending more time at looking at how all of the pieces fit together and work together, and to what extent are they in sync? I'm a big believer in alignment. The parts have to be aligned and they have to be supporting the strategy.
Agreed. Yeah.
So the senior leaders needs to back up and look at the organization and say, okay, when I look at the strategy, are we using the right strategy? Have we implemented the right strategy, number one? And then number two, do we have the right people in place? Do we have the right systems? Do we have the right structure? And do we have the right values? I think those are 4 things that are really important to think about and to make sure they're aligned with the strategy.
Can you repeat those for me one more time?
Yeah, sure. The people, do we have the right people? Do they have the right skills? And are they in the right positions is important.
Yep.
Second one is, do we have the right systems?
Okay.
Do we have to update our production system? Do we have the capacity to operate at a $10 million level or $50 million level? The other one is structure. Have we structured our resources in the most or the best way to take advantage of the opportunities that we have?
Right.
And then the last one is values. I mentioned values before, but I'm a big believer that values need to support the strategy, and the values build the culture of the organization. Now, Corey, and I know that there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, here are our 10 values," and they post them on the wall, and it's a
Man,
joke. I mean,
hoping you were going to bring this up.
yeah, it's a joke. I mean, it's not taken seriously. They don't operate that way, and that's a problem for the leader because now they lose credibility.
Right.
They're saying this is what I value, but their behavior doesn't match their values. So they lose credibility, they lose the ability to influence people, and that's not good. So I guess you could say that's another constraint.
Yeah.
So stepping back and looking at it, working on the business is everything aligned? Do I have the right pieces in place? What changes are needed? Where are the misalignments?
Right.
We talked earlier about all these rules and policies and meetings that somehow evolve over time. A lot of those are misalignments with really supporting the strategy to make the business successful.
Right.
So getting back to what we said, what can we stop doing? What's wasting time? What's non-value adding?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny when you talk about the core values, a couple points on that. I always say core values on the wall don't mean anything. Core values are the behavior of the owner and the leadership. That's
Couldn't
it.
agree more. Yeah. Yeah.
And to put an exclamation point on that, I have a client, I've been working with him for 7 years. He's one of my favorite guys. He's just this really big personality.
Mm-hmm.
He used to have a sign outside his door that said, be ready. I like to give ideas and talk a lot and disrupt your day and all this good stuff. He used to tell his leaders, I come up with 100 ideas a day. Your job is the one good one. I don't want you to execute on all of them. I want you to listen and find the good one and execute on that. But he told me a story about how he went through his core values. He brought his leadership team in and they tried to come up with all these fancy terms. He took them back to his, he had a group where a bunch of business owners met. And he put them on the table and they looked at him and they said, these aren't your core values. Your core values aren't what you think everyone else believes. They're what you believe, And so he was like, that was an epiphany for me. So I kind of sat with a few key people and banged out what is important for me in my business. And, for me, then I go out and I find people that are aligned with his vision, right? Because as a business owner, you can't say, man, you've done a heck of a job here, but now I need you to change all your beliefs and values and shift those to meet the need of everyone in your company. It's much easier to find people that are already aligned with you, or mostly. You're not going to get 100%, but mostly aligned.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
What other mistakes? And Paul, please feel free to disagree with me. My wife lets me know all the time. I'm not right very often. That's why I love having a podcast, because people agree with me. It's the only reason I started this. So what other mistakes do you see leaders make in terms of developing their people? And just to kind of go back, if I turn your last idea on its head, it sounds like the mistake they make is not empowering their leaders to do what they do, and they stay in their business instead of pulling out and then looking at the bigger vision of the business. So then those leaders have kind of a North Star that they're working towards.
Yeah, I think they spend too much time in the details and the weeds. They need to step back and see the system, see the big picture. Again, make sure the pieces are all aligned and being coordinated. That's a problem. I think another problem is if a company is going along fairly well and everything's working okay, they can get into their comfort zone and think life is grand and I can coast and everything is fine. These days, it's very competitive. Customer demands and wants keep changing. They keep getting more and more demanding. You can't sit back and coast. The leader needs to continuously think about what can we do better? How can we improve things?
Right.
Every process can be improved in some way. every operation can be more efficient or more efficient than it currently is. So
Right.
not getting complacent, not coasting. Now, don't get me wrong. It's, sometimes you got to step back and celebrate your success and, I'll have a team celebration and acknowledge the good things you're doing. But don't forget, come Monday, it's what can we do to move to the next level,
Right. Yep.
It's no different than athletic teams. If you start to coast and think we're great and everything's fine, then, the next opponent that comes along is going to probably, beat you by a wide margin. So don't let up, don't coast, keep thinking about what can we do to improve and operate at a higher level.
Okay.
And I think that gets back to probably having a good network of contacts out there too, and getting feedback from customers and suppliers and consultants, and studying the best companies, and always being curious and open to find something new and better. There's always something new and better out there. So you got to keep looking and be motivated to find it. So I think that's kind of another thing that leaders need to think about.
Now, I want to pick your brain on something here because you have a very deep well of knowledge. What are your thoughts on? We talked about what do we need to stop doing.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on owners? And I say this all the time. When you start a business, when you're bootstrapping, most businesses aren't VC backed, and they're bootstrapping. They're taking a huge risk, and they hire their neighbor, they hire their neighbor's cousin, they hire their in-laws, whatever, and everyone pitches in and does the work.
Yep.
And their primary concern isn't building great process and procedures. They're all doing whatever they can to push that business forward. In my experience, there feels like there's a point in time where for a business to be successful, the owner has to make a conscious decision to say, I can't be in love with what we've built to this point. It needs to be broken. This is what we did to get moving. Mm-hmm. Now it's time to upgrade and build and rebuild and implement process and procedures to get to that next level. Mm-hmm. And for me, the problem I've seen where where some owners get stuck is they can't make that disconnect, and they're in love with the struggle of the business mm-hmm. versus mm-hmm. the product or service. Mm-hmm. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very common and very true that they kind of went through that struggle with the group early on to get things going. And it's hard to step back and say, well, that was okay, but we can do much better, and we need to, redesign, re-engineer, totally revamp this process or that process, or restructure, whatever it might be. They have so much invested in those early days, and you've gone through so many struggles with your team. It's hard to, get out of that headset or that framework to think differently.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's really important for leaders to, be connected to the outside world in the sense of having a network of, other business presidents and colleagues and people you can bounce ideas off, and be open to the approaches and techniques they're using, and the mindset of always being curious and being motivated to find something better.
Yeah.
You can't be complacent these days. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It doesn't matter what field you're in. You can't be complacent. You can't just sit back and say everything's great and I'm going to coast and just coast in a retirement. You can't do it.
And what I think I heard you saying there, which is it's a whole other episode, the value of a network, of a business owner. You know, a lot of these business owners, they get busy, they have their group, their core group of people that are, everyone's given everything. They got blood, sweat, and tears going into that thing.
Yeah.
They all have their heads down and they look up. It could be a year, 2, 5, 10 years later, and things have changed and their business has changed. And being able to sit around a peer group of people who are going through that, who can empathize with you and are feeling the same pain, but also have some people around the table that can say, man, I remember that. I remember the moment I realized I had to make a change, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's powerful because business owners, especially small business owners, can feel like one person against the world. And they're in it alone. And it's me, you know, it's like, I'll just do it myself. No one else cares. And to give yourself a peer group of people who give a shit and have been there with you and can feel your pain, but more importantly, empathize with it, but also say, hey, here's what I did. And then the next person says, yeah, here's what I did. And then not telling you what to do, but just giving you some options and letting you know it's okay. Like it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to have to change, and we understand it's hard.
I think, Corey, it's really good if I'm running a business and it's $1 million in sales now, and I want to grow it to 50 million. I think it's really good for me to find 1 to 3 mentors who have done that, who have accomplished that.
Yep.
And I can learn a great deal from them about the struggles they went through and how they had to let go here and there and reinvent here and there. You can gain an awful lot. If you surround yourself with the 3 to 5 people you've gone through these struggles with, or you surround yourself with yes people who, whatever you say, I agree, that's right, yeah, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to work through those issues of letting go and saying, I got to just reconfigure this. I got to re-engineer this. I got to totally reinvent this. Or a really tough one is my nephew, who's been running marketing and sales, is not the right guy. I can't let him continue in that role. I need to replace him. So I got to figure out how I'm going to let him know that, and how I'm going to replace him with the right person to, lead that function and grow it, blah, blah, blah. So when you get into family issues and things like that, that can get very challenging as well.
Hardest decision a small business owner will make is telling someone who got them here, they can't get them there. And it's a gut-wrenching decision, and I tell my clients that all the time. You won't make a harder decision it's not why you opened your business, and you will not make a harder decision than sitting someone down who gave you everything to get you where you are and saying, I don't know if there's room for you here, or I don't know if this is the right role for you, or whatever that conversation whatever way it goes. But it's a crappy conversation.
Along that line, my wife worked for Travelers Insurance back a while ago.
Travelers Insurance,
And Sandy Weil bought Travelers. He was at Citigroup, and his daughter was running one of the major functions of his operation. I don't know which one it was, but he ended up firing his daughter. And my wife told me that one night at dinner, and I was like, "Oh my God, how could you fire your daughter from a senior position at your company?" But he did. He did. I don't know all the details of it, but I was like, "Wow, that's incredible."
Crazy. So, all right, so we beat these owners up enough. Let's give them some help. So let's give them some advice in terms of how to. Just want to stay true to the topic. So we're talking about developing your leaders because they can be a constraint. So as your business is growing, how can you keep developing your leaders at the same rate as your business to keep them relevant in the business so you don't have to have one of those hard discussions?
Yeah. Great question. I think even before I answer that question, I think the idea that the leader needs to model continuous development of themselves.
Okay.
I think if they can demonstrate to their team that they're continuing to read books and attend seminars and go to conferences and whatever, that sends a very important message about the importance of ongoing growth and development.
Paul, just to interject, are you saying that business owners should be constantly learning and educating and growing themselves?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a concept.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think that, as I say, I think that presents a great example to the team that growth and development, and there's always more to learn and what have you. I'll never forget, I reported to the VP of engineering at this aerospace company I worked at, and he was like 67, 68 years old. He was still taking college courses, seminars. Wow. Yeah, honest to God, he modeled ongoing development in a terrific way. And every one of his staff meetings, there'd be like 15 minutes. It was like taking an MBA course where he would, teach some topic and he would talk on it, but he would get other people involved as well.
Okay.
But as I say, he modeled this idea of you just need to keep learning and growing, and there's a multiple ways you can do that. So I think that's a very, good step to take.
Okay.
I think encouraging and providing the resources for people to go to seminars and workshops and, take courses and stuff like that is good. I always liked the idea where I worked, if you sent someone off to a seminar for 2 days on some topic, when they came back, they had to do a seminar to a group of people to teach us what they had learned and what made sense and what didn't, that type of thing. So I like that idea too. You could get a lot of additional benefit from that training. So I think that's important.
So I have a question about that, because one of the biggest criticisms of sending these people away to training is they go get this training, they come back and everyone says, yeah, we don't care. We're just going to do it the way we want to. But I also want to tie that back into, you talked about giving people reading and books and kind of reviewing those type of things.
Yep.
I guess my question is, does it make a difference, or does it make it more impactful if the owner of the business recommends the book and says, hey, I love the philosophies in this book? Mm-hmm. If everyone reads a book and the owner reads it and says, yeah, it doesn't do anything for me, but we're talking about it anyway, is it important for the owner to buy into the programs and the readings and the books and the information that his leadership is getting?
Yeah, I think it's important for the owner to participate in the process. I like the idea that everyone reads a book on some aspect of leadership and they take a half hour and they discuss it at a staff meeting. And the question is, what can we learn from this? There might be 2 or 3 key points that will help us further enhance our leadership techniques or approaches. So what can we learn from it?
Okay.
No book is perfect, and there's always some things that are like, that's a ho-hum and that wouldn't work here or whatever. Right. But what are the 2 to 3 things we should take away, and what can we use in our day-to-day leadership roles here? So I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, great. Thanks for clarifying that. Was there any other pieces of advice? You one last one you can offer up?
Regarding developing the staff and what have you. I think, the idea of having a mentor is certainly good for staff members as well. I think that's always good to have someone you can bounce things off of. I also like the idea of having an accountability partner.
Okay.
If I say I want to get better at listening and I'm going to do these 3 things, and Corey, will you be my accountability partner? Whenever we're in meetings together, would you observe me and give me some feedback? Am I doing these 3 things that I'm committing to do? I
Okay.
think it sounds kind of hokey, I know, but having some accountability is always a plus for making that habit become, really strong and, something you do all the time. So I think that's a good idea too.
I love the idea of accountability partner. The first thing that pops up in my mind is you have to be courageous enough to give that person permission
Yeah.
give you honest feedback. You don't again want a yes person just saying, "Oh no, you were great. It was great." You have you have to then be vulnerable and open enough to take that feedback
Yep.
and change it.
Yep. And it can be balanced feedback. It could be, would you observe and identify one thing I do well and one thing I'm not doing so well, one
Yeah,
thing I
of
need to
course.
improve on. So, you can soften it a little bit. And most times we are doing some things okay, and some
For
things
sure.
maybe we need to improve,
I didn't want to give the impression that you were just going to sit there and rip someone to shreds, right?
Yeah. His 12 things you screwed up on today.
Yeah, hey, I like this, I like this, I like this. But when so and so asked the question, the way you turned and answered that was not, you could have softened that or taken a breath and before
I
you
agree.
answered
Exactly.
whatever it was. But
Exactly.
negative feedback's negative feedback. Whether you give it the good sandwich or whatever you do with it, you always know when it's negative, and you always have to be accepting of that without reacting to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Paul, this has been great. And my favorite part of this interview is the way your Boston accent slips in there. Great.
Park the car in the Harvard yard.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Paul, if people are listening to this and thinking, man, I want to buy some of this guy's books, or I'd like to reach out to him and see if he could help my business, how can we get in touch with you?
Well, my books are all available on Amazon, but I will say they're very inexpensive and they're short too. They're like 50 pages long. You can read them probably in 30 minutes, and I think they're like $4.99. So it's not a big investment.
Cool. We can drop some Amazon links in the notes, in the show notes.
And I am active on LinkedIn. I try to post something there several times a week on leadership. So if you're interested in my additional thoughts on leadership, check that out.
And they can connect with you there too and reach out to you.
Yep. Exactly.
Hey man, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. This has been great. Yeah, I think it's good value, and people will get, there were lots of nuggets in there. So I hope people are listening for them.
I hope so. I enjoyed it, Corey. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, Paul. There you go. Paul Thornton, author, former professor and leadership coach. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Keyhire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of today's episode, want to keep up to date on our new content, make sure you leave a comment, let us know what you think, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd love for you to do that. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or whatever your favorite platform is. Just search up the Keyhire Small Business Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about working with Keyhire and how we can help your small business grow, you can schedule a meeting with us on our website. We are a help-first organization, so we guarantee no selling, no weirdness. We're just there to help if we can. Thanks for listening. I'm Corey Harlock. Until next time, stop grinding and start growing.